it is live now.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Today we are here webinar professional and technical education Shikshak Parv NEP 2020. Before we start today's deliberations, may I request all of you to maintain 1 minute silence in honor of Honorable Minister Sri Suresh Angadi, MOS Railways, who passed away yesterday in AIMS due to COVID. Let us maintain 1 minute silence now, and the proceedings will start thereafter. Thank you. Now let us start with today's proceedings. NEP 2020 has been hailed as transformational, changing, futuristic, young new India, digital India. After announcing the policy on July 29, immediately thereafter, on August 7, Ministry of HRD and UGC conducted first webinar, and Honorable Prime Minister himself spoke for 45 minutes on this policy. On August 14th, already the ministry's name was changed from MHRD to Ministry of Education, and thereafter there was a meeting on September 7, visitors conference where President came in. I think all people in the government are keen to implement this policy. And from September 8 onwards, we started off with this webinar series under Shikshak Parv, and technology in education was used as one of the topics on September 8, and we are sort of continuation of that being done today. But some important facets which should be addressed while our speakers will speak include our idea of enrollment ratio of 50% by 2035, multidisciplinary approach to universities, research-based universities or teaching-based universities, multiple entry-exit bank of credits, that is academic bank of credits, innovation, research, online education. By the way, for a long time, professional and technical education is in transition. And there are various surveys who often talk about employability issue, quality issue, whereas right from independence, we have been focusing on access and equity in gross enrollment ratio being increased from 0.7% to 27%, and 1/4 contribution comes from professional technical education. Addressing employability on one side, how our students who graduate become useful to society, they adhere to values and ethics, how they are not just theoretical knowledge holders, but also are able to solve problems. I think these are the issues which need to be addressed. And I hope all the four eminent speakers who are there today, Dr. Andrew Thangaraj, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, Dr. Sudhir Agashe, and Dr. Kamil Bijlani will speak on all these topics and how technology, especially in today's world, it is able to enable and support in order to reach and also achieve all these objectives which we are talking about. To start with, I will just briefly introduce all the four speakers. We have Professor Andrew Thangaraj, Professor in Electrical Engineering from IIT Madras. He graduated from IIT Madras itself way back in 1998, and then PhD from Georgia Institute of Technology in 2003. And from 2004, he is a faculty there. He has been associated with IEEE Transactions and Communications as editor, associate editor of IEEE Transactions of Information Theory. He has been a Nptel coordinator from 2011, and the reach of Nptel that it has reached to nooks and corners of all the engineering colleges, the credit goes to him. And he is currently also the Moocs coordinator for Nptel, and Swayam 2.0 is being developed under his able guidance. Recently, he has been instrumental in initiating an online diploma and degree program from IIT Madras. Then the next speaker is Professor K.K. Agarwal, who is the current chairman, National Board of Accreditation, obtained his BE from Punjab University, ME PhD from NIT Kurukshetra, with first position at both UG and PG level. In 75, he was directly appointed as professor at the age of 27 and a half years, a record of its sort anywhere, probably at least in India and also in the world. After a distinguished service of 27 years at NIT Kurukshetra, Professor Agarwal also served as Pro Vice Chancellor GJU Hisar. He was also founder Vice Chancellor of GGS Indraprastha University, Delhi, and remained for 10 years in this position. He is President of Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineers. He is also Academy Professor of CSIR. Professor Agarwal has contributed immensely towards research with 350 plus research publications, 150 of them in international journals. I think I can go on, but he has been recently awarded Delhi Ratan by All India Conference of Intellectuals. I hope he will be talking about accreditation and other issues a little later. Speaker 3 is Professor Sudhir Agashe, a principal investigator of Virtual Laboratory Project at College of Engineering, Pune. He is currently also professor and head of Instrumentation and Control Engineering Department of College of Engineering, Pune. Obtained his BE in Instrumentation, ME in Instrumentation, Electronics and Telecommunication, and PhD from University of Pune in 2007. He has successfully completed one of the very interesting projects, which is Braille printer and energy meter. He has successfully established very good industry connect in College of Engineering, Pune, including that from Emerson Process Management and many other automation industry people. He has been associated with Instrument Society of India right from beginning, and he heads the Pune chapter. Awarded with Shikshan Ratna by Visitex Foundation, Mumbai. The last speaker would be Professor Kamal Bijlani. He is Director of Amrita and Learning Research Lab at Amrita University. Professor Bijlani is the director of this e-research center, and very interestingly, he has developed several ICT-based educational technology applications, pedagogy projects such as Ample, AView, and others. Ample is a Moocs-based LMS system with advanced pedagogies like outcome-based education, personalized learning, reusable competencies, blended course creation, and so on. Professor Kamal also holds patents for classroom exam proctoring and quizzes using cards. He is the designer of AView platform, and AView is now installed in more than 12,000 institutions. I am aware IIT Bombay and IIT Kharagpur extensively use this platform for T10KT teacher training programs. I think that is Professor Bijlani. So with this brief introduction of all the four stalwarts in technical education, may I now request Professor Andrew Thangaraj to take over, share his screen, and start his presentation for about 12 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Sakshabudin. Could you please make me presenter?
Done?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen. Okay, so let me get started. The topic I've chosen today to talk about is something that's quite close to my heart. How to offer very high quality, large scale, inclusive learning through this online and digital medium. This is something that I've taken up for the past 10 years or so. I've worked quite hard at it, and I would like to present some vignettes from that journey, and also show how NEP sort of puts everything together in a nice way. And let me also thank AICTE and Professor Sakshabudin in particular for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. So here's the sort of a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about. Is in NEP, you have visionary statements about how India's higher education should progress in the next few decades, maybe. And you can see in the bottom part, I've talked about realizing that vision. And in fact, very surprisingly or very interestingly, we are sort of halfway into realizing a lot of those vision statements. And that's something we can be very proud of what we've accomplished. You can see the various points I put down there on how top institutions should offer online courses, how credit transfer should be incorporated into higher education institutions, multidisciplinary education, flexible structure, excellence in online distance learning, content in Indian languages, and some pilots on online education. And I would like to point out below that a lot of these things are sort of halfway. We are into it. We are doing it very well. SWAYAM is a prime example of how top institutes are offering online courses and exams are conducted and credit transfer is already done by a large number of universities. And recently, Nptel, which is a part of SWAYAM, is offering domain certification, and that is something we're excited about. We believe that meets a lot of the requirements that the NEP has put out. And another initiative is translation of the transcripts into major Indian languages. A lot of national coordinators of SWAYAM are involved in this, and I will talk about that also a little. And the next part is what has happened recently is there's been regulations for offering online degrees, and subsequently many programs have been offered now. Many universities have obtained permission and they're running online degrees on SWAYAM itself on the second vertical and also in other portals of their choice. And recently, IIT Madras, one of the top institutions in the country, has come forward to offer this exciting new online diploma and degree program. I'll briefly mention that as well. So this is a summary of my talk. Let me get into the first topic I want to talk about, which is swayam.gov.in. This is the Ministry of Education's national Moocs portal. It's up and alive and it's raking up numbers in huge quantities. The scale is really large. In 2019, there were 1,166 courses, 45.97 lakh learners. When I say learners, there's enrollments. Some learners take more than one course. We count that as two. And very interestingly, 3.5 lakh, more than 3.5 lakh registered, wrote exams, earned certificates. And that's a tremendous achievement for a portal which is only 2 or 3 years old now. And in 2020, the numbers are increasing. And remember, 2020 is a COVID impacted year. And in spite of that, all of us have come together to offer 1,248 courses, more than 50 lakh learners as of now. In fact, that number is increasing as we speak. And all of this fits very nicely into the clauses that NEP talks about of doing nice pilots on online offerings and examination. And the fact that we do in-person exams in SWAYAM has been a huge advantage because universities find it very easy to do credit transfer now. They don't have to do anything special. So a lot of credit transfers actively happening, and this is now become mainstream and online becoming mainstream in India. This is a fantastic example of how this has been accomplished. I put on all the national coordinators below. All of them contribute courses. Nptel, which I coordinate also, is one of the top contributors in SWAYAM, and I will talk primarily about what Nptel does in SWAYAM because that's the thing I have data for, but all the other national coordinators play a very strong role as well. So this is what Nptel has done, and you can see Nptel started in 2014 to offer these online courses, or Moocs as we call them popularly, and this fits very nicely into the NEP's vision of top institutions offering online courses for everybody. Today, Nptel has more than 2,000 plus courses completed. Number of enrollments since 2014. SWAYAM started around 2018, 2017. So Nptel has more than 1 crore enrollments, more than nearly 12 lakh people have written exams, and about 7 lakhs have been certified as of now. And the certificates come from IITs and IISc. These are well regarded and reputed institutions. So this has been a huge success story in the past 5 or 6 years in the country. Now, this is our new initiative, something that we are really excited about. This is NPTEL domain certification. So instead of just offering individual courses that students do maybe sort of randomly in a haphazard way, we have put together a set of courses, 5 to 7 courses, some of which are core, some of which are elective. And we are saying that if you do this, you may become an expert in that chosen domain of that discipline. Let's say it could be programming and computer science, data science, AI, these new areas. As new areas keep coming up, we'll keep populating these domains as well. And traditional areas are also there. VLSI, design, environment, even marketing from our management. We have these nice domains, and you can see how it's possible to integrate it into a regular college curriculum. And I hope ACT sort of supports us in this and urges universities and colleges to incorporate this into their curriculum and say offer minors for students. Even civil engineering students might want to earn a data science minor through NPTEL in this fashion, integrated into their curriculum, and that can only help them. And the cost is really low. It's just you pay only for the course. There's nothing more, and this can be a very effective means for making things multidisciplinary, making things holistic. Someone might want to learn about marketing. Why not? That should be allowed. So this is a very nice initiative. I hope this can be integrated as a domain into the curriculum as opposed to individual course credit transfers. This would be something very exciting to pursue in the future from NPTEL's point of view. Now, regional language content is something something that we're very passionate about. We think a lot about it and we work very hard towards it. And in about 8 languages, the 8 major languages that would be quite impactful, we are now translating the English transcripts of SWAYAM content into. So we've already progressed quite significantly as far as NPTEL is concerned. More than 13,700 lectures have already been translated. We bring out books with compilations of these transcripts, and these serve as real content in the languages. I put out 74 now. As of now, 250 books material is ready, and we will just run the code, so to speak, to create the PDF. You'll get it, and all these languages are well represented in the country. This would cover and help a lot of people and satisfy the NEP's vision of having high quality content in Indian languages, and this can be a starting point for so many more things. Okay. So that's I don't have too much time today. It's about 12 minutes or so. So half the story is SWAYAM. The remaining half, I'm going to talk about this exciting new online degree program. And that's all I have to say about SWAYAM. Maybe if there are questions, I'll take up specific answers. One more thing I want to point out, this translation is a huge pan-country effort supported by our local chapter colleges and individual faculty across the country. And I would like to heartily thank them and congratulate them on being part of this initiative. So this is the next initiative I want to talk about, something that I'm excited about, a lot of people are excited about, this new online diploma and BSc degree offering in programming and data science by IIT Madras. And once again, NEP has this vision in a couple of clauses of how we should go for excellence in online distance learning, not keep it as another option for somebody else to do, but excellence. And IIT Madras is committed to something like that going forward. And here is the program, and this program really fulfills everything that the NEP visualizes or as visions about for how a course structure should be in terms of being flexible, in terms of having multiple entry points, exit points, and still having high quality and maintaining rigor and everything. And this program, I've explained this quite often. Let me just quickly walk people through it. There are 3 different levels in the program: the foundation level, diploma level, and degree level. Foundation level has an exit point of certification. Diploma level has an exit point of diploma. Degree level, of course, has an exit point of degree. And at the end, you become an alum of IIT Madras. It's quite prestigious. We've kept the entry process really very open. Anyone with 12th and a couple of years later after that can participate in this. All you have to do is qualify, and you're not competing with others. There is no competitive entrance exam like IITs are infamous or famous for doing. We have kept a very open qualification-based policy. So you study with us, you qualify, you're into the program. And there's also another entry point. You can directly enter the diploma level if you feel your foundation is strong enough. And all exams are in person. All quizzes are in person. Every month you'll have an exam. So it's very rigorous. It's a sort of hybrid model. We have an army of mentors that we are hiring to help people and mentor people and handhold them through this. This will be a great experience for people to go through. We hope more and more people get excited about it, and more offerings like this come into the Indian landscape, and everybody benefits from programs like this. And this clearly fulfills NEP's vision as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is the syllabus and curriculum we have put together for this program. And NEP once again asks for creative combinations of fields of study. And I believe this is a wonderful example of that. We have brought in statistics, the mathematics needed, the computing needed, the machine learning needed, and the business aspects needed, along with the skills needed to create this unique curriculum, which gives this 3-level program multiple entry points, multiple exit points, and creates a wonderful opportunity for people to come out and be employable. Whoever you are, you can pick a part of this and improve your employability quotient very, very significantly. And if people are interested in more details, I would encourage them to visit onlinedegree.iitm.ac.in to learn more. And once again, thank you very much for this opportunity to AICTE. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Andrew Thangaraj. You are well within the limits. Actually, you took absolutely on the dot. In fact, there will be some questions later. We'll watch for that. But meanwhile, may I invite now Professor K. Emerging changes in accreditation of technical education system.
Thank you, Professor Prabhudev, for this opportunity to me this morning for sharing my thoughts on accreditation. Well, in the lighter vein, most of my research work has been in quality and reliability, and it's probably one of the very rare situations in government sector that you get the job the subject which you love. So having worked in quality all through, I have been asked to verify the quality of technical education. That's the job. Now, having said that, I thought I'll talk about how will the accreditation scenario change with the implementation of NEP as we go along for a few minutes as we have. First of all, to begin with, at the moment, country has primarily two accreditation agencies, as you all know, NAC and NBA. NAC does accreditation for the institution as a whole, college or university as a whole, and NBA does it program-wise. That's the first major difference which we have between the two. NAC still remains to be an autonomous body of UGC, while NBA became independent of AICTE. Our relationship with AICTE now is not of an umbilical cord relationship, but hand-holding relationship. And this primarily came in because of the Washington Accord, which wanted NBA to be completely autonomous body, not dependent upon any government or semi-government body, so as to ensure that the independence is preserved. So that's what we have been maintaining for last more than a decade, the relationship with the AICTE, and we follow all the norms of AICTE. But one sentence between regulation and accreditation. See, AICTE has been a regulatory body and they approve all technical institutions. See, the problem with any approving body is that most of the time they have to approve the project on a greenfield. A college is just starting or university is just starting. Now, with all the sincerity they have, they can only look at land, maybe first year infrastructure, and so on and so forth. It will be very unfair for a regulatory body like AICTE to ask for all the infrastructure for 4 years and so on and so forth. And therefore, accreditation becomes a very important test of quality because this is applied after 2 batches have graduated. So we know how the college has been functioning, how the programs have been conducted, how the stakeholders, industries have received this program, how the placements are happening. So this can be done only at a later stage. And therefore, it was well realized that both these steps are independent and are important by themselves. And we have been following that since then. Washington Accord, as because you are all from technical education, know it's a memorandum of about 20 countries understanding, where we have a list of graduate attributes which have to be followed by all these 20 countries graduates. And the reason for Washington Accord was simple, that we wanted to ensure international mobility of our graduate engineers. Now, if a graduate engineer from an accredited institution in India wishes to practice in any of those 20 countries, he is allowed to do that because our graduate attributes are common. And another point which I'd like to highlight here is it's probably first time more than a decade ago where the concept of outcome-based education started in India in technical education. And now, of course, it's percolating down to all fields of education. NAC is also starting to talk in terms of learning outcomes. Even school education is going on learning outcomes. But outcome-based education first came to the formal scenario in technical education. And let me frankly admit, it was primarily because of Washington. But the beauty of the whole thing is that it's not a bottom-up design, that I will teach this, and I hope he will be a good mechanical engineer or he will be a good civil engineer. It's other way around. What should a mechanical engineer must possess? So these graduate attributes are listed first, and then the curriculum is supposed to flow down. So it's essentially a top-down, bottom-up approach, which is done in outcome-based education. And why I am raising this is, I think national education policy itself is a very great case study on outcome-based education. For the first time, I think I have seen that elaborate version of a policy which has first listed what is expected of a 21st century graduate in all domains of education, and then how do we go about it. And that is where this multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, all those concepts came in, and Gandhiji's 5 principles came in, and everything came in. But it was listed first, and then the flow chart came. So I call it a good case study on outcome-based education per se, which will be very relevant, and outcome-based education is stressed a lot. So in future, I expect all accreditation exercises will become outcome-based education. Well, we do find little difficulties even now to specify outcomes, even for engineering education. We are still on the job, but it's not so easy because some people tell me, and rightly so, supposing a group of 6 students compete in a national hackathon and do very well, should it not be a very perceptible outcome? It should be, because those students have applied many subjects of engineering to solve that problem. Similarly, good quality project work should be an outcome. Now, how to factor these things in is a challenge which we'll have to deal with. I went to Stanford about a decade ago, and they told, Professor Agarwal, we don't measure our performance in terms of immediate placements. We measure where our students are 20 years after graduation. Were they able to unlearn, relearn? That's a practice. So after 20 years, where do they reach? We collect that statistics, and that's a measurement of our performance. Immediate placement is just a very small indicator of the whole thing. And in our country, by and large, primarily because of private colleges, immediate placement became a overreaching thrust, which may not be very good. Similarly, another very good university told me abroad, said, sir, on the convocation of the university, we always want to invite the best guests in the country. We will be very happy if after 20 years, we can invite one of our graduates to address our convocation. That's our measure of outcome. Have our graduates reach that eminence that we feel proud in inviting them to address our convocation. So these are the outcomes which are difficult to specify, but we will have to go to outcome-based measurement everywhere. And mind you, this will apply even to dance, even to arts, and so on and so forth, which apparently should be more difficult. But having said that, we believe it's more difficult. It has really not been so. For example, let's look at martial arts. Somebody is there to say that you are eligible for green belt or not, you are eligible for orange belt or not, and they have laid down standards. So it's a very firmly based outcome-based education which is going on. NCC, you get a B certificate or C certificate. There are standards here. As a matter of fact, Spady's book, which is the most fundamental book on outcome-based education, has been written by a school teacher in sociology. So it has nothing to do with higher education. It has nothing to do with technical education as such. And he says there are only 2 things. Number one, you write on a piece of paper, what do you expect the graduate to learn after the degree? And number 2, when you assess, only question you should answer it, has he achieved it, yes or no? If that is done, outcome-based education is done. So I think outcome-based education, to be very firmly placed, will be a challenge. And when we go multidisciplinary, it will be all the more greater challenge. And we have yet to introduce it. In the last meeting of Washington Accord, we discussed maybe sustainability development goals become a part of outcome-based education, because that's what we expect. So it's a dynamic process, it will change. And I also believe that the focus now will shift, at least partly, from achieving heights to achieving breadth also. I mean, so far we have been saying specialize, super specialize in our subject. Now we are saying more multidisciplinary. So maybe few institutions may be designed to be very good in height, but many others will have to be a balance between breadth and height. So that's another change in accreditation which will come. And finally, vocational education and technical education will have to come together in a very major fashion. This boundary between vocational education and technical education will diffuse with multidisciplinarity and in multiple exit points. So that I think will come. And finally, I think outcomes may not be defined only for engineering graduate per se. We might have to define outcomes for the types of institution. A book on accreditation gives a beautiful example. They say you subject a monkey to a test, you subject the fish to a test, and you have written, everybody should know how to climb up a tree, looks like good. Everybody should know how to swim, looks like good. And both fail in accreditation. Now, that's not the way to do. Our accreditation should be, if monkey today can climb 100 feet, can he climb 150 feet in next 5 years? If fish can swim 100 meters, can she swim 150 meters in next 5 years? So that is how outcomes will have to be defined. What you are capable of doing within the resources, within the time frame, and have you done that well? So I think that definition of this will come. I also believe BWalk, which is a course which has been launched by AICT, has still not come in the domain of accreditation, which will have to be now accredited, because I personally believe country may be more amenable for BWalk ultimately, because this exit point may be a medium level industry, small medium industry in this country has watched for it. And finally, there has been a very nice lecture right now, Professor Andrew. When we go in for digital education, online education, how do you achieve graduate attributes by that mode of education? People ask me, how will the accreditation change? I say, we will bother only about graduate attributes. Have you achieved that? But we have developed rubrics of how do you achieve graduate attributes on a classroom education, but yet to develop rubrics and ensure how to achieve the same graduate attributes using online education. So that's another a great challenge which we'll have to overcome in the next few years. I think with that, I complete my 12 minutes and hand it over to Professor Sarvudde to take it to the next speaker to answer any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor K.K. Agarwal, for that wonderful, how new education policy is talking about outcome-based education for the first time. I think that's a very important point that you have made. And I'm sure with the online education coming into the fore, how do we do accreditation? I think these are the challenges. Some questions will come at the end. So let me now request the next speaker, Professor Sudhir Agashe, who will speak on virtual labs, a way forward.
Sir, hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, thank you so much for giving this as an opportunity, because I'll be focusing more on the laboratory part of engineering education. As we all know, laboratory is a backbone of engineering education, and we all have to look at it from the perspective of learning. So if you really look at the national education policy, what that policy is talking about, and the onus is on academicians to recognize, identify, and foster the uniqueness, giving flexibility, focus on the regular formative, not summative assessment. And last is technology use and integration. That's what is expected. It's a huge challenge in front of academicians. And I picked up the laboratory component, how to deal with the laboratory component. And if you look at the challenges which we are facing as far as conducting laboratories are concerned, is basically how to enthuse students by giving challenging assignments, how to extend hours of laboratories, but meaningful hours in the laboratory, how to track the learning of each student, an individual student, and how to assess student at each level. Finally, consolidating the report and then saying that I have to keep my labs up and running all the time. These are the issues which we are facing. And on the background of these issues, only technology can help in solving these problems. It is said that less technology is being used in technical institution. We need to change that perception outside. So what we want actually, what is the solution which we can have is, can we have laboratories for 24/7? Is it possible? Can we have tracking of the learning of individual? Is it possible? Can we have and collaborate with various institutions for the costly equipment in the form of remote triggered laboratories? And finally, how can we achieve radical changes in teaching learning and evaluation process. That's the biggest challenge which we all are facing. And that's how the virtual laboratories and remote triggered laboratories will help us in achieving these goals. I'm going to demonstrate you the laboratories which we have developed and how we achieve these things. I'll go quickly to the websites, what we have, and how we are doing all those things. For example, we have a virtual terminal unit, which is basically a remote triggered one. We have a virtual laboratory in internet and intranet. And the reason is our country is facing a lot of difficulties as far as network is concerned. We don't have still a good network and the bandwidth for all the students. And that's the reason there has to be a need of the intranet facility, and then we will go for internet facility. All put together, if you combine all these things, you will find that we want something like this, that a student would come, get enrolled, as Professor Andrews has rightly pointed out, as far as theory is concerned. I am proposing this for the laboratory. Now, in this case, what will happen is the tracking of the use of individual, which laboratory is being used by which student, up to what extent, and whether he has learned or not. And you will be surprised to see the way we are talking about and finding out how to get the usage of the laboratories. Whenever you go to the usage of the laboratories, this can be tracked individual level, you can track it at college level, and that's what is and will be catered together as far as the outcome is concerned, laboratory outcome is concerned. Now, what is important, what we all have talked about, and if you can see here, it's clearly, this is what we are proposing, that there has to be a feedback mechanism, there has to be online test, and the test result would be made available to a student and made available to the supervisor, that which students are facing which difficulties. That is very, very important for all of us to understand. And then we can have a corrective mechanism. It should not happen that an intelligent student is getting bored and an average student is also getting bored because the thing which we are talking about is not suiting him. So in both the cases, in the same class, and that's the tragedy and that's the challenge of our country, that we have to take care of both the side of the students. One should get challenged and other should get supported. And that's how you will find what we are doing now in the phase 3 of virtual laboratories. We are tracking the job profile of a student. I'm just giving you an example of an instrumentation and control student. A student, particular student, if he or she is intended or interested in going in an industry, what is he supposed to do actually? He has to do many things like configuring, connecting, characterizing, calibrating, fault finding. These are all the job profiles. And all the job profiles must be part of that experiment. And if you can track how much he or she has learned, beautifully we can say that, yes, I can guarantee that this student possesses this competency. Ultimately, this has to happen. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on remote triggered laboratories, where this will be a game changer as far as cost of education, and that to technical education is concerned. If you invest in the high cost equipment, if you invest in high cost equipment and use those equipment only for 10 to 12 hours in a week, and most of the time is in cupboards, I think we are not giving justice to the investment. Our proposal is, if we can make these laboratories available to other students from other colleges, instead of duplicating the thing, we can definitely, instead of duplicating, we can share the resources so that the usage of those laboratories can be enhanced. And we already have developed a model which works so nicely, keeping in mind all the safety aspects as far as these remote laboratories are concerned, because the experiment which I'm going to demonstrate you is related to a boiler and which is getting fired remotely also. And so this is a small program which a student would develop, which he has already practiced in the virtual mode without any actual equipment. Once he has obtained this, then he will develop a program like this, and then a live thing would be there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm showing here that I'm going to fire this heater so that this temperature would go high. At present, it is 141 degrees Celsius and around 2.87 kg per cm square. And this is physical. Any student can book a slot. We have 13 pilot plants, which we have already designed, and he or she can use those facilities. Even institutions can use those facilities, and this is how he is going to click, and he's going to start, and he's going to perform the experiment. Now just look at this. Now the heater is on, temperature will go on. The beauty of this is every 500 milliseconds, all the readings are being captured, and all these readings can be given and in an Excel format to a student so that analysis can be done by the student. Experiment won't stop after just completing the experiment. Analyzing those results is equally important. Now what I'm going to do is, we have a version wherein in this remote triggered laboratory, you can see here a control ball. An IP-based camera is given to each and every pilot plant so that a student can see how the things are changing. And I'm just going to show you once again where a student can play. At least we can give them an opportunity to typically just see this control wall is moving. So he gets a feel that things are happening. These are in front of me. Though geographically I am away from the plant, because of this IP-based camera, the entire control is given to him. And whatever mistakes while performing the experiment, which a student is doing, all these mistakes are being tracked at the back end. And the report would be given to a student and to his supervisor, asking that these are the mistakes, let's learn from the mistakes, because only in academics mistakes is allowed. Once you go in professional life, mistakes are not allowed. So here there is no cost for failure. So let's enjoy that freedom what an academician is getting. So this is the remote triggered laboratories which we have, and anybody who is interested in using these labs can book a slot and use these equipment, costly equipment, I can guarantee. And that's what. There is a safety aspect, and there is a 3-level safety. And I always, with my colleagues, the professors and the consortium members of virtual laboratories, we always commit that even if you wish, you can't damage those systems. It will be used safely because we have taken enough care in developing those systems. But what is important is, this is very, very important, wherein the tracking mechanism, whatever he or she has learned is getting tracked, so that the laboratory outcome, which is not being given true justice, we can even give justice to the laboratory. Because let us not forget, tomorrow's world will be skills world, and we have to develop those skills, inculcate those skills in the students right from the beginning as far as engineering education is concerned. This is a small effort by our consortium virtual laboratory project funded by Department of Education. And if at all there are questions, because of the limitation of time, I'll have to stop here. But if you have any questions, we all will be more than happy. Thank you so much, the chairman, and AICT also is strongly supporting these type of things. Thank you so much, sir.
So I'll be looking here and talking here. I'll be sharing this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Agashe, your statement for students who are in the class, challenging them is important. And at the same time,
let me share this.
Yeah, I'll just say.
And Professor Agashe will now hand over the baton to the next speaker, Professor Kamal Jilani. He's already smiling, waiting for the ball to be transferred.
Yeah,
he will.
Can you get that?
No, he must have got it now, I think.
Yeah, he got it.
Thank you. I will now share my screen and start my presentation.
Dr. Jilani will speak on job readiness. It's so important from the employability perspective on one side. And we would like to be a developed nation, naturally, therefore, passion for research and innovation is second aspect. We will combine both of them. So,
thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Is it?
Yeah, it is there. It is coming. Yes.
Okay. Very good. this here. So I'd like to thank Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe for giving us this opportunity to share our work. At the highest level, we are going to talk of job readiness and passion for innovation and research. So we have broken that down into what is it we need in terms of pedagogy, content, technology, bridges, vocational courses. And we have also done a complete case studies using our own LMS, Ample, which we have been working actively with many colleges who we have given this to, and they are trying to go online and the challenges they are facing at this time. So I'm going to share some of those challenges that they are facing in all of this. Okay. So basically, when we come to job readiness and passion for innovation, what are some of the qualities that we need? And we have taken this from most of them from chapter 11 of the NEP document, actually. So, from a job ready point of view, we feel soft skills is probably one of the most important fundamental things. Technical skills are obviously needed. In additional, as the chapter 11 NEP document says, humanities and vocational is needed. And of course, goal awareness needed. Just like in India, there is a slight difference in the student between India and sometimes in the West. Here, sometimes in India, the parent is the main stakeholder and not the student sometimes. Whereas in the West, where the student is paying for his fees, he's always the stakeholder. He's deciding, I want this, I will do this, I will get this job. So that intrinsic goal awareness and motivation is often missing in our Indian students, and that's a very fundamental issue that we need to bring about. Unless they have the awareness of the goal, the self-motivation will not kick in. Similarly, for the passion for innovation, we know we will need these qualities, problem solving, critical thinking, imagination, persistence, and again, goal awareness. Why am I doing this? Where am I going with this? So those are fundamental things. So what we are now saying is, what are the goal awareness pedagogies? What are the pedagogies that we have currently? So outcome-based education as well as competency-based training, they are both goal-based pedagogies. And outcome-based education tells you what will be the outcome of this program, what will be the outcome of this course, what will be the outcome of this quiz. At every level, you're doing outcome-based education. And similarly, for competency-based training, where you're trying to get a job, it is more focused on getting you maybe a vocational skill or something like that. What are examples of learning pedagogies? Like flipped classroom, blended learning. Then we have assessment pedagogies like personalized learning, formative assignments, and so on. So in the passion for innovation, what we suggest is that we continue doing things like tinkering labs, which is a national project for schools. Live-in Labs is a unique project by Amrita where we send people to villages. We send our students to villages and they live there for 2 to 3 months. They figure out what is the local problem and they build a solution for it. So that is what we are doing continuously. And these are the other aspects that we feel are needed for building. Basically, we're feeling that hands-on project-based learning has to happen. And then the reporting of that innovation or that work is what leads to research. So for all this, we've been, as I said, in our using Ample with colleges right now, with about 100 colleges, we are telling them that, you should have this content in your portal, technical, soft skills, vocational, and value-based, like I said earlier. But what is actually happening is most of the colleges are simply running live classes using some tools like whether it is Teams or some of them are using AView or some other tools. Very few colleges are actually getting an LMS, let's say Moodle or Ample or anything, putting the e-content there and doing a structured approach. But that is what is needed. And some of these contents, especially in areas like soft skills, and humanities are missing. So what happens to these colleges? So this is our sort of world of content that we have provided across India. But the question is, when I talk to a college teacher or a college principal, they don't know where to go and how to integrate it into their college education. So that is the challenge that we are facing as a nation, that the college principal or the teachers need to be educated in a very systematic way, how they can take our national resources and bring it down to the world. So these are the questions they ask. Which portal should I go to? How can I take that content? Can my students take it? How do I do bulk enrollment? Some of the teachers don't simply want them to go away to another portal, even though it may be Swayam, because they want to be involved in the course. The teachers want to be involved. They want to say, while the student is taking the course, how do I monitor them? How do I get the student reports? When I'm getting the content from them, do I have to use all of it? Can't I break it up? Can I use some of their videos and not all? Can I take 5 minutes of an Nptel video instead of 50 minutes? So these are the kind of questions people are asking us. And so this is our, sort of challenge to Professor Sahasrabudhe, to give him, we have to build connections. We have to build national highways. We have to integrate, and we have to take it to the last mile. That last mile is very important, right? Because we have all these things, but we have to bridge the gaps. We have to do. And so let me give you an example how we think the gaps can be bridged. So Amrita is doing a project with the Skill Ministry, and along with them, we have developed 250 courses in vocational training, which are available free to the country. But very few people know about it right now, for example. Okay? How do we bridge the gap? We have to, in skill alone, we have 2.5 lakh students taking these skill courses on eSkill India portal that we have developed with them. And this is their dashboard, for students and teachers. And this is using Ample also, our LMS. So what we are suggesting is, one at a time, we need to build these bridges. What are these bridges? Let's say you have Nptel, you have spoken tutorials. We need to provide a bridge. A bridge would just be an API or software API or whatever it would be. But we need to build bridges so that if I'm using Moodle, if I'm using Ample, or if I don't have an LMS, how do I use this at my college level? That is really the challenge that we need to solve so that we can get to the last mile. And I'll just give you a brief run through of Ample in 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to go very fast. But I'm just saying that the earlier pedagogies that we talked about, we have built them into Ample. Including outcome-based education, personalized learning, reusable competencies, and so on. And I'll just briefly give you a view of all of these that are there. Including learning objective, the project was done by IIT Kharagpur for the pedagogy project. That whole concept of learning objective we have also included in Ample. And so we are hoping to have a pedagogy-based LMS, basically. So here, for a dashboard, let's say you are running 10 colleges, you would get a dashboard where you see all your 10 colleges. Then if you go into one college, you see that college. Let's say this is our Coimbatore campus. You see 4,000 students there, and you see all the courses that are running there. This is actually live data from Coimbatore. So then, another college we have in Amrita, Bangalore. This is again live data from there. So what is the concept you're starting with? At a concept level, every course has a topic, and on the right side, you see it has a course outcome and a program outcome for outcome-based education. If this is once mapped up, then you can very easily put this into Ample, and you can create that same structure there. And based on that, you can start getting the reports for learning objectives. And the teacher can get reports of multiple learning objectives, which are the analytics, which tells you how many students are doing well in each concept and who are not doing well in each concept. Based on that, you do your outcome-based education, you do your mapping, you get your course reports, and then you get your program reports and your program attainment reports in AMPL. You can have reusable competencies. So if you have anything can be treated as a competency. One course, data sciences can be a competency, virtual labs can be a competency. And once we have this library of competencies, like I have here, then, you know, within AMPL, I allow you to import one competency into your course and make that part of your course. So we have reuse. If we can make all our content across the country as competency or modules, and I allow the college teacher to import any one thing into their course at the college level, then that would be true integration. Here is another kind of integration where the live platform like GeoMeet, Google Meet, MS Teams, you know, WebEx, anything can be blended along with your learning teaching module. Then that will go into a calendar, and the student will see it as their LMS, and you know, they will have personalized learning, meaning that first they get medium level questions, and then they get difficult level questions, and they get easy level questions. And the results of that will be available to the students and the teachers. We have done one initiative where we are giving AMPL and GeoMeet to many colleges, which is completely free, so that they can run their college during COVID time. These are teacher reports, student reports, all kinds of reports. Here, actually from the highest level, you can go down and see each question of each student. And we also have multiple sections integrated. So if you're teaching 20 or 30 sections, you still have one content. So this makes it very easy for people at the college level. Okay. So finally, we also have a faculty performance module and a module for getting all their papers and publications from Scopus into AMPL, and that can be seen by department or campus and so on. So let me summarize. So our recommendations are, let us try to integrate. We have lots of investment and lots of good work going on in a lot of content portals that I showed you. How can we integrate them so I, as a small college in a small corner of India, can use it? That I think is our challenge. And we need good content in soft skills, humanities, arts, values, and vocational courses. We have a lot of good content in engineering, as was pointed out by the Nptel reports. We need to focus on these areas also. We need to have multiple pedagogies. If we want to have job-ready students, and we want to have passion for learning and output, we need to have multiple pedagogies. And we need to integrate them into our platforms. So with that, I would like to, thank all of you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Bijlani. Creative work that Amrita has been doing of the country, as you are saying. So, but certainly it is used by the entire country. So let me now come to some sort of discussion amongst the panelists. Some raised in the platform here, and some questions were there in my own mind as well. Some of them matched them. I would like to open up this discussion, and if I'm having a person in mind, a question being asked, ask the particular person, otherwise anyone can answer them. The first one is about the accreditation of online programs. I think this is a question which is there in the minds of many people. That is, in terms of accreditation, there are visits which are undertaken by the NBA. First, go and check the outcomes, whether they are achieved or not. Whereas in an online program, everything is in a way virtual. How do you understand that the outcomes have been achieved? How do you first define them? And if you define them, how do you measure them? And do give accreditation. Today, there is no accreditation for online programs. But if the graduate programs are beginning to into force in various domains, of course, in engineering and technology or in pharmacy, architecture, where high content of laboratory is there, we are still not allowing online program. But where there is less program, like MCA, is allowed, travel and tourism is allowed. In fact, how do we do accreditation? Professor Agarwal, will you be able to throw some light on this? Microphone is muted, probably.
We have still not worked on it extensively. We have just started this process because online education itself was a new thing, and it came under disruptive situation of COVID. So everybody was busy in that. So we really did not work on that. But my central attribute remains that graduate attribute is defined. Now, the only thing is how do you measure it when the student has not been in the class? Some things would rather be easier. For example, one of the graduate attributes is lifelong learning. Now, that probably may be even easier to execute and measure on online education because you have lectures on various technologies, various emerging scenarios, so simply and so easily done. But on the other hand, team working may be difficult, for which we have been doing extracurricular activities, sports, etc., etc. So this is, I personally feel, as you will agree, that ultimately it may not be purely online education for most of the situations. We will reach a steady state of blended learning in most of the cases. Therefore, personally, I believe we should develop rubrics rather for blended learning. And then online learning may be a special case of blended learning in some situations. And in blended learning, when we go, probably much of the measurement can still be done on offline mode, and records can be seen offline mode. For example, instead of 4 lectures, you have 2 lectures. The remaining thing is done in a flipped classroom mode, and etc. So maybe it's a question of developing little SOPs, but basic essence would remain the same. But that process has to yet start very seriously. And all over the world, that is so. We had an international webinar for all the Washington Accord countries. Every country is talking about the same thing, and nobody still has been able to very concretely devise rubrics for online. It's going on.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Agarwal. There are a few more questions on accreditation. Well, I think there's a lot of interest on accreditation. I will come back to that a little later. But Professor Andrew, you talked about the SWAYAM courses and Nptel courses being translated into 8 languages. The original idea was to translate into 10 languages, in general, later to all 22 national Indian languages. That is fine. That area is already being addressed in some kind of automation, some hard work is going on. But there is also a provision in the new education policy about entire degree being done in the local languages. So can this kind of translation and the audio video recording availability, if it is made to all the candidates in the nooks and corners, to envision that the education in other domains, of course, in arts, there are already programs which are run in the local languages. Can you see, because all the courses, they are translated in local languages, then can there be a full degree program in engineering, in maybe Tamil, in Hindi, Bengali, Kannada, Marathi, Odia, Assamese, maybe down the line? Immediately may not be feasible, but how do you see that?
So if you ask my personal opinion, once again, this is a personal opinion, I think it may happen in a mixed mode, sir. I think that's the most likely event in India. So most of the technical terms, at least in technical domain, engineering, most of the terms are in English, and given the world is coming together, I think knowing the terms in English is quite an advantage. It's not wrong. But for comprehension, maybe the explanations can be in the mother tongue. In fact, I think you won't be surprised if I tell you, if you go to even a state like Kerala, in the government colleges, quite a large fraction of people come from Malayalam medium. And in fact, a lot of instruction happens in Malayalam, the first year, second year, even though the technical concepts are in English. And I think for all practical purposes, we are doing the instruction in the mother tongue, and that's something that's very useful and interesting as well. I think something like that will eventually be something that's more practical than having everything purely in one language, which I think for a country like India going forward is maybe not the most practical thing.
Yeah, I think, Professor Andrew, you're right. And that is why all our translation we have started in the early courses, first year courses, and the courses where there are difficulties, or the basic and foundational courses, because he has come from the Malayalam medium or a Telugu medium, and suddenly everything is in English. So he gets gradually used to learning in his own language, at the same time learn the terms and technology in the English language. I think that is the transformation that is. You're right, actually. Professor Agashe, you had a splendid explanation about the virtual lab and remote control lab. The question is, can there be a possibility that any college in the country can book a slot for this remote control lab and make use of your college facilities? This is a very important question that has been raised.
Yeah.
And how can they do it, or how do they do it?
Yeah, sir, definitely. Any college can book a slot and use these laboratories, because we normally give them a slot of 2 hours where a student or the instructor can perform the experiment and can show it to the students. That is possible. And that's the facility which is already available. Only thing is they have to write to the our contact ID is there on my website also, and then book a slot. And we will train the teachers. We'll be more than happy to extend such facilities, sir. That's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I will come to Professor Agarwal again. There are many questions, as I said, so I will keep coming back to you. The question asked is about the FSR, that is faculty-student ratio, which we often there are in this. One of them is we are promoting use of SWAYAM, that is MOOC courses. Up to 20% of the courses are already permitted to be taken under SWAYAM. And UGC has already enacted a resolution that it should be increased to 40%. And once the Gazette notification comes in, up to about 40% of the courses can be taken through SWAYAM. That means a college can take courses from any of the IITs to the extent of 40% of their curriculum content. Then what is the sanctity of FSR, and what is the mechanism, modality of measuring it? Can there be a waiver is one question. And therefore, this question asks for some kind of a relaxation in the FSR. On the other side, there is another person who has asked a question that although AICT mandates that the faculty-student ratio required is 1:20, and most IITs have faculty-student ratio of the order of 1:10 or 1:12, how by having a ratio of 1:25 in the NBA accreditation process are we ensuring the quality? I think both the questions are counter to each other, but I think you take a holistic view and explain both the sides of the coin.
Yeah, I think your Professor Subudh is perfectly right that there's a bit of a dichotomy in this, because student-faculty ratio itself, let's face the reality that there's a academic angle to it and there's a commercial angle to it. I mean, many a times, particularly the private institutions, whether the aim is academic or the aim is commercial, that's also a question which we have to see. When we have made it, when we say that many courses could be on a SWAYAM platform, still, word over, except in very few cases, people believe hand-holding of the student will still be required even if the course is taken online, because there could be some concepts he doesn't understand. Now, if there is no teacher for that, and student-faculty ratio is removing those courses from the teaching load, then there would be no teachers to explain those concepts. But many a time, the students will feel the necessity of approaching the teacher for explanation of some of the concepts, even if he or she has taken the course online. He needs some handholding. And then a course might have an associated project which teacher will have to guide, and so on and so forth. So there would be requirement of a teacher. As a matter of fact, many studies tell that the requirement of the teacher really does not reduce, it's only change. It's only format of guidance changes. You don't give a lecture in the classroom, but then if you have to explain the concepts in smaller groups, you might not be able to take a lecture of 60 students. You might have to have group discussions in 15 students each or 20 students each. So net effect of student-teacher ratio at the moment appears to be requiring almost the same. We'll see as we go along. Now, it's a dynamic process. You are right when it's 1:20 made by AICTE. NPA did not make it 1:25 as a measurement. We made it 1:25 as a pre-qualifier. The reason is very simple. If AICTE mandates 1:20, the colleges will get post-sanction based on 1:20. Now, to expect that on a single teacher will leave anytime, so nobody will get accreditation. Therefore, we made pre-qualifier as 1:25, but you still get full marks only when you get 1:20, because that filter was made only to facilitate. Even in NIT, if government starts sanctioning course on the basis of 1:20 and one teacher leaves, they will not get accreditation if we keep 1:20. So what we did was pre-qualifier is 1:25, but full marks are still at 1:20. Similarly, I'll tell you on tier 1, we had for 6 years accreditation, our norm continued to be 1:15. And it was a serious situation because nobody will sanction posts on 1:15 now, whether it's private or government with the ICT norm. So we have made it now 1:20 even for 6 years accreditation. So it's a dynamic process. We keep it in mind. But number one is a pre-qualifier filter, which is kept a little relaxed to give you entry into the accreditation process. And secondly, we still believe teachers will be required. There would be, when you go deliver a course online, maybe you have 200 in a class. But when you have to explain the concepts to them, you might have to have a class of 15, 10, 20, and therefore net effect may be the same. This is what we feel for the time being at least.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal. I think this is misgiving amongst many institutions, so this clarification will help them understand why 1:20 is still the norm, but only to get a pre-qualifier. Otherwise, with one vacant position also, they cannot apply for accreditation. I think this is very well said, and that's very important. But for your information, for the viewers, AICTE has said that for all those aspiring institutions, that is autonomous institutions who want to become deemed universities and who are already deemed universities, faculty-student ratio is in fact 1:15, not even 1:20. I think taking this forward, Professor Andrew, I want your opinion about the new education policy, which talks about the entire education to be multidisciplinary. It is not to be single disciplinary. That means most of the IITs were started as technical institutions, engineering and technology institutions. There are technical universities in the country. Every state has a technical university. And there are law universities, there are medical universities, and they have all become very focused. And Professor Agarwal in the beginning maintained that, we have to have width also along with the depth. So what is it that we can do with the existing institutions, which are basically mono or what we say at most a couple of domains that they are holding, to multidisciplinary, so that students get the flavor of truly a total width that is required as a holistic citizen of the country?
So I have a solution. It might be a little bit radical, but maybe a good policy for us to follow. One of the trends that's happening recently is a lot of universities are being started, mostly by private players, for the sort of well-to-do crowd. You look at Ashoka University, Kriya University. These are all not technical primarily. Usually arts and other areas dominate those disciplines. and they're becoming very popular. They're doing a very great job, but the fee is quite high, as you can see. I mean, it's very difficult to sustain that. So what is the equivalent that the government should do in this? How can we create a really high quality alternative to the Ashokas and the Kriyas of the world, which an average citizen in the country can aspire for? And I think my solution is to let the IITs and ICERs, they are there now in every single major city and every state you can think of, mentor a university, which you can call, I don't know what you can call it, you can come up with a name for it, but so that the three of them become some sort of a package together, right? So you can think of IIT Bombay, IISER Pune, mentoring something in the Mumbai-Pune highway, and that could be the university which deals with all the other subjects. And one such thing for every single state. I think it's a wonderful idea. It can be a good alternative for the high quality non-technical subjects that we've always been thirsting for a long time. And I hope somebody takes it up. Maybe ACT can take it up. I don't know of it, but it's an interesting idea.
But there is a regulatory framework also talked about in the new national education policy, that instead of having multiple regulatory bodies like AICT, UGC, NCTE, Pharmacy Council, Council of Architecture, there must be one overarching apex body called Higher Education Commission of India. And under it, there are 4 verticals. One of them will take care of what we know today as the regulatory bodies work. The second one, that of the accreditation. Third one, funding. And fourth one, quality and norms setting, standard setting body. And in light of that, we don't push the work to AICT because we don't know. So this was in the lighter vein. But how do you see this single regulatory body and its functioning, how it will take country forward in terms of quality, in terms of accountability, which the policy often talks about?
It's a huge challenge. I think it's a very big challenge in India to get 2 organizations to work together. I think is a huge challenge in this country, and there is an ambition to have 5 or 6 different organizations from different disciplines, different ways of conducting affairs to work under one platform. It's a big challenge, and I'm definitely not the right person to even comment on it, having known only the technical side most of my life. But it will be a huge challenge.
Yeah. If Professor Agarwal wants to say something on this, he may say. Otherwise, we'll take to the other question.
So, Professor Agarwal, you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
I had a bit of time testing of the concept, because devil is in the details here. When we start working, then only we will know. As a concept, it appears fine that instead of defining verticals by the domains of education, like technical education is one vertical now, medical education is another vertical now, law education is another vertical now, but then the whole thing is changing into different methods of defining verticals. Accreditation is very different, funding is different. In a way, it could be positively understood in the sense that if there are different bodies, that the bias, positive or negative, does not come in. The bodies act independently. Now, for example, if UGC has approved something, they want to accredit, they want to give the fund, there could be some sort of biasness built in, which could be positive, which could be negative. So that could be taken care of. And at the same time, discipline-wise diffusion may help us to achieve interdisciplinarity, because normally there's a tendency to stick to discipline. For example, being in technical education, we took so many years to allow more non-technical content. I think only in the last 5 years, we reduced the credits and allowed for other things to happen. Otherwise, there was always a tendency to concentrating on technical courses. So that tendency may go. My personal take is, when I talk about depth and width, I think we will have to allow flexibility between the ratio of depth and width also to various kinds of institutions. Maybe IITs may continue to be 90% depth and 10% width, while some other colleges might be 80-20, some might become 70-30, and so on and so forth. So this ratio of depth to width itself will have to become a flexibility depending upon your research infrastructure, depending upon your rigor of academics. I do not think that we should lose very high depth institutions also in their own perspective in going forward, because that itself may be counter. I mean, IIT starting new courses may be fine, starting a law course fine, but then trying to make depth go weak, because we need at times depth also. So I personally am a taker of depth to width ratio also being a flexible parameter for different categories of institutions. This is what I feel. Let's see how do we go.
I think Professor Agarwal, you touched the real key point. Actually, depth and width must have a proper ratio. It may be 1:1 or it may be whatever it is. But I think that is a very important aspect that you have dealt with. Interestingly, when we are talking about anyway multidisciplinary universities, multidisciplinary or educational, naturally there is no point in having different types of regulatory bodies for different domains, because now they are all under one umbrella. And that makes sense. That's why that there is a single regulatory body, which is one of the verticals of the apex body, which is Higher Education Commission of India. And therefore, it makes quite a bit of sense. And as far as the different verticals of whether it is medicine, law is concerned, there would be certainly standard setting bodies. So they will decide what are the minimum standards, what are the outcomes to be achieved at the end of the program. And that has to be dealt with by the regulatory body. And the regulation itself being very transparent, supposed to be in the basis of self-disclosure. And therefore, the regulation is called light but tight, so these words are very, very important. I think it gives a message that there will be no inspection Raj on one side, but at the same time, if you don't follow the norms, stringent possible actions can also be taken by the regulatory body. I think that is the meaning which is associated with that. Now, let me come to Professor Bijlani. So you talked about research as one of the activities, research and innovation. By using technology, whether it is your AView platform or any other platform developed, so we collaborate in research. Ministry of Education, the formerly MHRD, started two very important programs called GAN and GAN +1, where physical movement of faculty was happening and people used to come from abroad 1 week, 2 weeks. Similarly, there is a research funding last year, wherein unless you have collaboration with another foreign university, we don't get funded. Now, with the technology in the picture, how do we do collaborations in research? What kind of metrics should be there so that we can design systems where we can, be away thousands of kilometers, but still collaborate and continue to do research?
Sure. I think that would be a very much needed initiative, since basically, we would need some portal where we park all our research projects of various domains, especially the interdisciplinary projects, so that all the projects are there and they would have all the required keywords in them, so that you're able to search across them, and then you find where you want to do your projects. This would also be very useful. All colleges in the final year, masters, PhD, they're always looking for projects, for student projects. So there needs to be a common national repository, sir, where AICTE can drive or sort of at least recommend. These are the areas in which we want more work done by the students and the PhDs. This will become just like you have your innovation program, sir. The innovation program with the ministries, which is done every year, for example. That same innovation program can become the basis of the repository and the areas in which research is done. And once we have defined those areas and those keywords, then we also need to see how the top 100 universities of the world or the top 500 universities of the world, what areas are they doing research in? That can also be done. And then we need to see what should India focus on as a nation, sir. So part of this whole national education policy, then in that portal, it would be a collaboration portal, sir. And then every college could log into that and use that and contribute to that. And obviously there would be various guides and committees. So you have AI, you'll have cyber security, you'll have electronics. All the various areas would be there with the particular guides, and the mentors would be there on that thing, sir. Sir, you're muted, sir. I can't hear you.
I think continuously it is muting, unmuting. I swear. Oh, well, so it's an interesting idea that how do we have a collaborative platform where people can come together. In fact, all the interesting problems of not only India, but the whole world, whether it is in environment, water, transport, pollution. I think these are challenges which we are all facing. So how do we collaborate is important. I think we need to develop common platforms. Now, coming to Professor Agashe, there are a few things which are asked. How do you know that students have learned the lab skills in your virtual labs? So you said that you conduct some tests, but see, handling an equipment actually physically in physical space is completely different from that of using it on a virtual platform. So how do you ensure that they have really understood the lab skills and they can do them?
Yeah, sir, as far as virtual labs are concerned, these are not really replacement of those skills which we will be getting from the physical labs. That's part number one. Part number two is there is a limitation as far as how many hours you can spend in physical lab. So a preparatory part of the lab will be done in the virtual lab. And when because of this platform, when you are tracking what a student is doing, so in a simulation mode, what mistakes he or she is incurring, it can be detected and can be addressed so that this is wrong, this should not be, this is the way you should do it. So 70% of the handholding will be done in the virtual mode of learning. And then once he has attained certain level of competency or comfortness, then he will be moved to the physical lab. That's what we are proposing actually. So in short, tracking mechanism has to be very, very strong. What exactly a student is doing and whether it is right or wrong. Instead of spoon feeding, it would be given as an indication that can you work like this. That's how the labs are now, the phase 3 labs which we are developing, wherein these things are already embedded in those labs actually. So that can be done.
Yeah, Professor, some misunderstanding that these institutions are developing these labs independently. And therefore, one of the questions asked is, we should have these labs, but there must be avoidance of duplication of effort. But there is a national initiative. Please explain how many institutions are involved and where are those sites, so that they want to have a single platform where one can come, and there must be one lab developed by only one institution rather than similar experiments being done by multiple. We have scarce resources. Probably that was the idea of the question.
See, so the problem, this entire consortium comprising of 12 institutions, like 8 IITs, 2 universities, one NIT Surathkal is part of it, and College of Engineering Pune is part of it. These are the 12 institutions, and all these 12 institutions have developed their labs as a consortium. It's not independent. So whenever one particular lab or experiment is getting approved, no duplication, and that particular experiment or lab is catering to the curriculum of some universities in the country is also being looked at. And all these labs are centrally hosted at vlab.co.in. Is a central repository where all these experiments are there, where any student from any college and the faculty members can go and visit those laboratories and use those laboratories as a central pool. There is no duplication. So we have to go to that central pool. I'll repeat, it is vlab.co.in is the central repository. Yeah.
There are some, suggestions about changing in the curriculum structure based on the new national education policy. I think certainly changing the curriculum must be a regular process because technologies are rapidly changing. I don't think it is just because of new national education policy, but even otherwise, curriculum has to be revised at regular intervals, maybe in a couple of years' time, because the technology changes are happening too rapidly. Professor Anil Gupta from IIM Ahmedabad has said that there must be a repository of all the projects which undergraduate students do. In fact, there is a portal which Professor Gupta himself has developed and which is available. All the projects of all the institutions, if they are posted, there are two things which happen. The next batch of students will not be repeating the same, and there will be a new thing which will come up, something new will occur, and the new one will also get reflected onto this portal. And similarly, those ideas which are patentable or up to the level of taking up to the entrepreneurship level, there is a Yukti 2.0 portal also, which is a futuristic platform where people can come together and make use of technology developed by X student by a Y entrepreneur. I think those are facilitations which have already started happening. I'm sure they will be useful. Now, I will last question which I would like to ask is the new education policy also talks about Indian knowledge systems. And since Professor Gupta asked the question of the projects, but through the National Innovation Foundation, from the grassroots, many innovations which have been identified, and some of them are either in the form of oral tradition, some of them are in the written possible way available. I think all of them need to be compiled. And Ministry of Education already have a Indian Knowledge Systems division established in AICT. I think we are working on that. So how our education, which is a professional and technical education, look at it from the perspective of what India had achieved in the past in Indian knowledge systems, some of those which are still existing in many remote areas, tribal areas, how do we compile, bring them on one platform and make use of that, not only as a inspiration, but how we can take it forward in the technical and professional education so that further research can be done in that domain. I think all four of you can pitch in and say a sentence or two about it. And time is also running out, and then we will close the discussion. Anyone can.
Maybe I will go first. I mean, since everybody's hesitating. Okay. So I'm aware of 2 or 3 cases where I think India contributed in a very big way going early on. Mathematics is one of them that I know quite well, and Nptel for its part has done quite a few lecture series on mathematics in India and has showcased it on its website. I would welcome people to look at it and be proud of it. And I think we should teach our students. There's a fantastic compilation of history of math in India. I think we should teach our students the important things in math, at least that India has a part for. And we should be also very fair and correct about it. Let's not go out and say, we knew everything, we did everything, we were great. Let's be fair and correct about it. And there are a lot of scholars who are fair and correct about it. And we should do that. And I think that pride makes a big difference in students' ability as they go through. And a similar thing in engineering also should be done. Definitely Bose's achievements in the early 1900s, a lot of people are aware of it. And we should make more people aware of such spectacular achievements in the engineering side. Those are 2 instances that I know of. I'm sure there are many more. I hope others can talk about those as well.
Yes. Well,
this will be an excellent area to research on. My take would be we should take an ancient concept and instead of trying to be so obsessive about it, let's give it a modern interpretation as to how the modern science and technology can look at it and find out what was the science behind it at that time, which eloped with time, but is there again. But there was science in all those concepts which would come on. I was just reading the other day, last week itself, USA has announced a $10 million award for how does the information flow takes place in the cells of the body. And that is the fastest transfer rate ever conceived. Now, the point is whether we talk it ancient knowledge body or whether I give it a different name, connect with the nature. So these are the areas which should be looked at from the modern science point of view, and how we can make use of modern science to support them, and how can we learn from those things to go something better. For example, I mean, I just read somewhere, I'm no authenticity of this. They said the horse can run so fast because they did the entire stress analysis on the legs of the horse for race, and they removed certain mass in the leg of the horse where there were no stresses, and therefore the weight was reduced, so it can run. And now they are trying to employ the same concept in the wings of the aircraft, where there is no stress, let there be no mass. So, I mean, something like that, learning from past rather than obsessing with the past, I think that will be a contribution of the modern science and technology to really give the past knowledge a very scientific base, which I believe it exists.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal. Professor Agashe, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, sir, see, the entire problem which we have found is the knowledge transfer from one generation to other generation. There was no systematic way of doing it. So even in teachers also, the way the pedagogy is being used by many teachers across the country, there are very, very effective pedagogies which are being used by the teachers. If we can concentrate them, articulate them properly, and make it available for all others, and probably going back and checking what is the impact of these type of pedagogy on others, that relational or relative study would help us a lot, indicating that yes, the knowledge is getting transferred. Let's call this as reinventing wheel. But if we keep on reinventing wheel, the vehicle will never come on the road. So that's the change which we have to achieve. That's my opinion.
Okay, Professor, is there? Are you all available?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we have at Amrita, we have a department, Amrita Darshanam, which is an international center for spiritual studies. And as part of our undergraduate program, we have courses in first semester, second semester, third and fourth semester. We start with the first semester. We have cultural education, 2 credits, and 1 credit course, first and second semester. And then we have Amrita Values program. So that is also another course where we teach various things, which includes modern culture as well as moral stories, but also includes Bhagavad Gita, some few Sanskrit prayers, Mahabharata, just the gist of them in a very simple and lucid way. All these is covered in our undergraduate programs.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Kamal. In fact, not only in technology, in chemistry, physics, astronomy, in maths, in fact, from 0 to infinity, Ayurveda, material science, yoga, these are all great contributions. We must be proud, and we should do further research on whatever was already achieved. I think that is what message which we should take. Lastly, important thing I just learned recently was, we today talk about different ways of learning by students. We say classroom teaching learning, laboratory-based teaching learning. We talk about internships. We talk about project-based learning. We talk about experiential learning. We have internships and hands-on training. These tutorials, I think 7, 8, 9 models which we talk about quite often. but there are 51 different ways of learning written in the ancient texts. 51 different ways that a student can learn. I think these are some of these knowledge which is very, very useful. I think we need to unearth and make use of it in our professional technical education as well. Thank you, Dr. Andrew Thangaraj, Professor Agarwal, Dr. Sudhir Agashe, Dr. Kamal Bijlani for being with us and very exciting discussion on various points which were raised by various viewers. I'm sure that this would be very useful for decising a policy for implementation of new National Education Policy 2020. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.